Boom. Hi, everybody. This time I'm actually going to talk about a movie that I grew up with as a kid, believe it or not, and I know it's often looked at as one of the absolute worst of its kind, but also it's was, of course, critically reviled upon its release, but in the years that followed, it became a massive cult favorite, all, of course, thanks to its home video release, and all, of course, a plethora of other things. And the film I'm about to talk about is Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive. Maximum Overdrive is a sci-fi horror film that came out back in 1986, and it's basically about the Earth ends up getting caught in the tail of a rogue comet. Then, not long after that, every mechanical device or machine on the planet begins acting on its own and starts striking out against the human race. And the story ends up focusing on a bunch of people at a truck stop in Wilmington, North Carolina, which actually is where much of the movie was actually shot, believe it or not. And the people there begin noticing that things begin to act weird. The semis of the truck stop start moving on their own, and before you know it, they're literally in a complete battle for survival. Pretty much. That's pretty much the gist of the film in a nutshell. I mean, it kind of goes into literally apocalyptic end of the world territory almost with a movie like this. Maximum Overdrive is actually based on. It's not the same story that Stephen King wrote. Believe it or not, I actually have the book here that the short story is in. Yeah, it's a short story called Trucks, and I happen to have the book that it's in, which is Night Shift, which I actually have it bookmarked here. There it is. Sorry. There it is. Trucks. It's only like 17 pages long, though. It's a rather elaborate story, literally about again, the human race is attacked by some unknown force that causes every mechanical device on the planet to start acting on its own. And again, the survivors are basically in a truck stop or a gas station, and of course, there's again some unknown force causing all the trucks on the planet to start acting on their own. But in Maximum Overdrive, we kind of get a bit of a understanding reason why because at one point because they think that it's the tail of the comet that's causing all the machines to go amok, and I'm thinking, why would a comet cause all these machines to go crazy? It's just a comet. So what? But this is one of those films where I'm probably thinking, yeah, and also the other thing of course I should have mentioned this a moment ago when I was mentioning the movie. Yes, this is a Stephen King film, but it's also the one and only movie that Stephen King himself personally directed. So, Stephen King, one of the greatest authors of the 20th century, decided to take it upon himself to write and direct his first feature-length movie, and by the way, his one and only film. This is his one and only film credit as director. So, why did Stephen King decide to take it upon himself to decide to write and direct? Well, I mean, this is not the first time he's written a screenplay for one of his movies. He actually wrote one prior. He wrote for, I believe he wrote Cat's Eye, and he also wrote Silver Bullet, I believe. But this is the first one he wrote and directed. So again, why did he take it upon himself to write and direct one of his own films? A film based off one of his own works? Well, I guess maybe, at the time there was at least a dozen Stephen King film adaptations made based off his work. And he decided that if you wanted something done right, you got to do it yourself. And not to mention, at the time of the movie's release, he was battling a severe cocaine addiction, literally. So maybe he thought, well, if they all can make my stories into feature films, why can't I make one of my own? Why can't I do one of my own and make it into a feature-length movie? And that's, I guess he thought he could, because I realized Stephen King had I know he has screenwriting experience at least, but he doesn't have any. I know for a fact he doesn't have any film directing experience, but he tried his best. And while the film does have some very effective shots. It does, but at the same time, it's like it makes you wonder, what was he thinking coming up with a story? I mean, deciding to go into film directing. And unfortunately, the end results didn't really pay off too well. Unfortunately, the movie was critically reviled upon its release in theaters in 1986, and it was not a big hit at all at the box office. Which, the other fact that it wouldn't help was that Maximum Overdrive was not the only Stephen King movie to emerge in '86. The other one that came out that year was Stand By Me, which enjoyed a far better box office run. It was far more successful critically and financially, and it dealt with a much more serious subject matter and more emotional impact than Maximum Overdrive did. But Maximum Overdrive was made on a $10 million budget, give or take, and it grossed a little over $7 million before it was pulled from the theaters. So, and currently it's only got a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes, making it one of the lowest rated Stephen King film adaptations out there. And it's often considered by fans to be one of the absolute worst, if not the worst, film adaptation work based on Stephen King. And, of course, at the Golden Razzie Awards, Maximum Overdrive did pick up 2 of them. Worst Actor for Emilio Estevez and Worst Director for Stephen King. Now that I mentioned Emilio Estevez, I might as well look at the cast that this movie has, because this movie actually has a pretty decent cast of actors. I mean, Emilio Estevez, who happens to be one of my favorite actors of all time, because, of course, if anybody don't know who he is, he's obviously known for, he was a member of the Brat Pack, appearing in films like Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire, but he's probably more well-known as Billy the Kid from Young Guns, and, of course, Gordon Bombay from the Mighty Ducks movies. Pat Hingle, who also appears in the film, I believe, probably best known as Commissioner Gordon from the first 4 Batman films, the ones that Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher made. Laura Harrington, the only other movie, that's her by the way, only other movie I recognized her in was Devil's Advocate. I know she made a lot of other movies besides Maximum Overdrive. Yeardley Smith, who played Connie in the movie, she would go on to, I think she's off camera there. I think she's to the left of, that's her husband, Kurt, by the way. They're newlyweds in the movie. She would go on to be the voice of Lisa Simpson from The Simpsons. So it's got a fairly decent cast of actors. One of the crucial things, and of course, when Stephen King was coming up with the concept for the movie, I'm sure at the time he was definitely listening to AC/DC, which he personally had them do the music for the film. Which, by the way, out of all the films out there that have ever been made, whether they be a film or a theatrical film or a television series or whatnot, this is the one and only credit that AC/DC has been given in which they fully contributed music to the film. Every single piece of music you hear in the movie is by AC/DC. Well, with the exception of the Flight of the Valkyries theme, which I think was put there on purpose for the scene with the plane flying around. Which is interesting because the same year Maximum Overdrive came out, it's the same year AC/DC put their album out, Who Made Who, which doesn't look like anything, but on the back here, yep, it's the official soundtrack to Maximum Overdrive. Of course, it's only got 9 tracks, which the other interesting thing about Who Made Who is, by the way, there's the CD. Yeah, this is the special cardboard sleeve case, which is pretty cool. I actually got this at Walmart for like $7, but it's actually worth it. Pull out this thing right here. It's basically a bunch of... It's pretty neat, actually. Yeah, this was when they started putting out like the AC/DC albums, like they started remastering them. The funny thing about Who Made Who is of the 9 tracks that are on the CD here, if I can get that in there, there you go. Of the 9 tracks that are on the CD, only 3 of them are brand new. The rest of them is basically, they're like songs from previous albums, like, well, You Shook Me All Night Long and Hell's Bells are both from Back in Black. For Those Who About to Rock, We Salute You is obviously from the 1981 titled album, For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. Sink the Pink, Ride On, Shake Your Foundations are all from different albums. Ride On, by the way, is the only one of the 9 songs that was done by, instead of Brian Johnson, it's Bon Scott. Now, the 3 songs that were new here are obviously Who Made Who, DT, and Chase the Ace. And which, by the way, DT and Chase the Ace are instrumental songs. There's no lyrics. Who Made Who's the only one that was made new for this album that actually has lyrics. Who Made Who actually was a very successful album when it came out in '86. In fact, at the time, it was the second best-selling album that AC/DC put out, right behind Back in Black. And believe it or not, the album was far more successful than the movie itself was. Interesting. It was more successful financially and critically than Maximum Overdrive. Yeah, the album was very well received upon its release. So, that's it. Yeah, like I said, that's rather interesting. So, yeah, of course, the movie, like I said, was a critical and box office bomb, and it obviously faded in. Well, thanks to home video, it suddenly got a massive resurgence, and it got a really big cult following for lots of major factors. Well, not just AC/DC, but also the film's main villain, which is the Green Goblin truck, which, by the way, yes, is modeled after Marvel's Green Goblin, which is one of the most iconic things about the whole movie, literally. Of course, the numerous one-liners and some, one-liners, that's kind of, maybe I shouldn't say that much, but it's fairly obvious. One of the biggest disappointments of this movie was that it was marketed as a horror film, which it is. I mean, but I feel the film is more meant to be like an apocalyptic action thriller than it is a horror film, because, I mean, much of the scenes in the film, in fact, I think there's maybe only one scene in the movie that kind of gave me a bit of a jump scare. And if it didn't make you jump, then that's okay, because I whenever I watch this movie, I get that feeling that it was not meant to be a horror film at all. Because although there is loads of chaos, destruction, and mayhem, and yet some of the kills in the film are pretty brutal. Yeah, this movie does have quite the body count. And yeah, a lot of graphic, bloody imagery in the film too, so it's got plenty of that. And it's got plenty of explosions and destruction to make Michael Bay blush. It does. It has plenty of it. So I'm like, I don't even know if this is a horror film. I think this is more of an apocalyptic action thriller, because I feel like that's what it was. But then again, at the time, Stephen King, half the time, I wonder if he even knew what he was doing as a film director, or the fact that, again, as I said, he had no prior film directing experience prior to making this movie. So, I've actually watched Maximum Overdrive on VHS. I owned a DVD version by Anchor Bay, which actually was a pretty solid release of the movie. There were actually 2 DVDs available, one by Anchor Bay and the other by 20th Century Fox, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think 20th Century Fox was the company that helped distribute the film theatrically. If I'm not mistaken, I think they did, but they probably have since disowned the film after it came out. But Dino De Laurentiis, his company group, DEG, was the company that released Maximum Overdrive, which, by the way, up to this point, this was the 3rd or 4th movie, I think, that Dino De Laurentiis presented for Stephen King after Dead Zone and Cat's Eye and Silver Bullet, actually. And now, very recently, Maximum Overdrive got inducted into the Vestron Video Collector Series Library, which honestly was pretty fitting, actually. And obviously, as you people have been probably got annoyed enough just looking at the front cover here. Obviously, the front cover is very elaborate and beautiful, to say the least, and morbid, of course. But overall, it's actually a pretty good, decent-looking front cover from the movie. It would have been nicer if Vestron Video or Lionsgate, which, by the way, is the company that... So anyway, this is obviously pull the cover sleeve off here, which I'm actually glad the Vestron Video Library includes these cover sleeves, which is pretty cool. And here's the Blu-ray. Blu-ray is pretty elaborate, as you can see. It's pretty much got the same cover as the sleeve here, and of course the cover sleeve. The video quality on the disc, honestly, this is probably the best me or anybody else is probably ever going to see the film look. But it does have its ups and downs. It definitely shows its age in a few spots, it being an 80s film, so it's obviously going to show its age in some areas. But for the most part, this is the best I've ever seen the film look, by far. I would say out of 5 stars, 3.5 at the most. Maybe a 4. Close to a 4. As for the audio, well, the audio is presented in, the video is in 2.35x1 widescreen, which at the time was one of the very few Stephen King film adaptations to be presented in widescreen. Cat's Eye and Silver Bullet were both in Panavision, as was Christine, I believe. So yeah. The audio, honestly, is presented in, well, of course, according to the back here, it says it's in 2.0 stereo audio, and I think there's also, I can't be wrong, I feel like there was another additional audio track than the one that's on the back here. I think there was more, so maybe the Lionsgate Blu-ray doesn't have all the info. But I thought for a fact that there was a 5.1 DTS track. But then again, I could be wrong. But I think on the Blu-ray, if I remember correctly, I think it was on there. But the audio is actually pretty good. It sounds, I think it sounds better than the video itself looks. So I would say out of 5 stars, I'd probably give the audio maybe 4, maybe 4.5, because it sounds pretty good. The explosions come out very well. The truck sounds, everything comes out very well. As for the bonus features, well, Vestron Video and Lionsgate really just went above and beyond and literally labeled out yep, it definitely deserves the term collector series, because this is a fully loaded special edition. Now, some of the prior DVD releases, the Anchor Bay one, all it really had was like a trailer and a biography of, like a quick biography of Stephen King. Like a quick autobiography of him. But Lionsgate went above and beyond and actually loaded this disc with a wealth of supplemental features. Starting off as a pair of commentaries. One is with writer Tony Magistrale, author of Hollywood Stephen King. And it's basically, they don't just talk about Maximum Overdrive, but they kind of talk about like most of the other film adaptations that were around prior. But for the most part, they try to stay on track in some ways. But it is an interesting commentary to listen to. The second one has actor and comedian Jonah Ray and Ryan Turek, who was a film executive of Blumhouse. And they talk a decent amount about the movie. They laugh at certain things, and apparently, from what, again, both commentaries are interesting to listen to, but it's kind of interesting that nobody from anybody that was involved with the movie doesn't talk about the film. That's just kind of odd there. But yeah, they're both worth listening to if you can, so we got a bunch of featurettes here. Truck Stop Tales, interview with producer Martha De Laurentiis, who, by the way, was, Martha Schumacher, same person, by the way. She actually later married Dino De Laurentiis. She had recently since passed on, but she actually talks a little bit about looking back on the movie. Rage Against the Machines, an interview with actress Laura Harrington, who played Brett, as she looks back on the film and her actual career. Honeymoon Horrors, interviews with actor John Short and actress Yeardley Smith. They both played Kurt and Connie, respectively, and they look back on the movie. Maximum Carnage, interview with makeup effects creator Dean Gates, as he looks back on the movie. A Kid in King's Court, interview with actor Holter Graham, who plays Deke in the movie, the little kid, as he looks back on the movie. The Wilmington Factor, looking back at the filming of Maximum Overdrive with members of the production crew in North Carolina, so it's kind of like, tracking down the filming locations where they shot the movie. Who Made Who, an interview with Murray Engelhart, co-author of AC/DC, Maximum Rock and Roll. It's obviously a little history of AC/DC. Goblin Resurrectus, the restoration of the Happy Toys Goblin truck. I think his name is Tim Shockey, I believe. I'm actually friends with the guy on Facebook, believe it or not. And he actually tracked down and actually found the remnants of the Green Goblin truck, and he actually restored it. And to this day, he actually goes around cross country promoting this thing, which is pretty awesome. I definitely have to give the guy kudos for, actually restoring this truck. Well, not the truck, but the Goblin face. And from what I've heard, several of the cast and crew members actually signed it, from what I've read. So it's actually an interesting little feature to look at. There's also some behind-the-scenes footage that was shot during the production of the movie. Still gallery, theatrical trailer, and TV spots. Of course, a friend of mine have actually mentioned, is there deleted footage? And unfortunately, there is not. I guess the closest we're going to get to deleted footage is probably in the behind-the-scenes stuff. So that's about it. Overall, it's actually a great supplemental package. Definitely worth looking at if you're a fan of the movie. And it definitely trumps all the other home video formats. In fact, the Fox DVD didn't even have any extras at all. So I would say here for this supplemental package out of 5 stars, I'd actually give it a 4.5. So it does not disappoint in the bonus features. So Vestron Video, you actually put out quite a stellar release of this movie. So in the long run, I would say for Maximum Overdrive, the Vestron Video Blu-ray is a top-notch disc. The movie may not be great, but I mean, of course, I enjoy it because I think it's a fun little ride. I mean, it has a little of everything. It's got chaos and destruction. Is it a horror film? Like I said, it doesn't have that many scary moments to make it even. Yeah, like I said, one of the most disappointing things fans found about the movie is that it just wasn't that terrifying as everybody thought it was going to be. But for the most part, it's somewhat enjoyable. It's definitely a very violent movie. It's definitely got a lot of graphic imagery, a lot of bloody kills in it. So honestly, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But for those of you that love cult movies and love that kind of stuff, or not to mention those of you that dig AC/DC, you're going to love Maximum Overdrive. It's actually a fun little romp of a movie to get through. So, if you can somehow get your hands on this at a good price, I'd say definitely check it out. This is actually a fun little ride to check out. Definitely. And for those of you that like AC/DC, definitely try to find Who Made Who. But if I had to pick AC/DC's best album, I have to go with Back in Black. So this concludes the presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will continue to do more videos like this in the days to come. And if you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. So until then, take care and be safe.